Okay, so I'm Terhi Takanen and I'm really happy to be here with you. Overall I'm practitioner. I have been having this kind of deep passion to individual and organizational renewal in 20 years. And now I'm also feeling that this is the question about our whole planet. And this presentation is very connected to Markus' presentation and this idea about consciousness revolution, because I feel that it's really important that we are finding also practical ways how it can happen here and how it can happen now. It's not about the future thing. I think the future is happening here and now, and also the spiritual world is here and now. And this is the beliefs which are behind this. So I'm speaking about co-creative process inquiry, which is this kind of developmental approach, which was outcome of my PhD. I was doing my PhD in Aalto University's business school, but I'm actually educational master. And I think that this approach is very new, but it's having deep connections, for example, with Steiner's work. And it's very ethically oriented way of re-relating ourselves. And I think that the key to this consciousness revolution is that we can make this shift in ourselves, inside us, but also in our relation to others, our relation to nature and the whole planet and environment. And so here is some key beliefs which are here in my research. So when we are really present in our way of relating, then we can re-relate differently. And it means that we are less separating. There comes this slow perception, and it's also more flowing and soft. Then this normal paradigm, which is in most science, this subjective, objective thing, it's disappearing when we are relating differently. And there is practical ways of doing it. And as Mark was also telling, that a new science is bringing that everything is in the flux, that's the thing what is happening all the time, and nothing is like stable. And it's same in for example, work life, that we are in the constant change. And it's important that we are recognizing that and not trying to manage things, but seeing that we are co-creators there, that we can become conscious co-creators, and how it could happen. And by conscious co-creators, I mean that our ways of feeling, acting, willing, thinking, all this is shaping our realities in the here and now. And that's really important to become more aware, and it's possible to do it anywhere. And so from that perspective, I think that I'm working with organizations a lot, and I think that there is no need to this kind of change work where we try to put future somewhere and then take strategical steps toward that. But it's more important that we are connecting ourselves and others deeper way and seeing how we are creating the future here and now in the way how we are working together. So I want to share some basis of this kind of study, because I feel that this is humble effort to make some kind of spiritual study. And when I was trying to find that kind of way of doing it, which can overcome this subjectivism and objectivism, I found out that participatory action research is the way where we can see that the whole planet is living being, and we can speak about relating with instead relating to. And I also find relational constructionism, which is actually rooted to Buddhism. And they have very deep spiritual practice under this relational constructionism. And I found that was good for this kind of research, what I was doing. And there is the belief that we are all relational beings, that all our ways of thinking, feeling, willing, and acting are forming realities from moment to moment. And this planet is also a living being, and that we need this kind of enlarged epistemology, that we can't just to use our intellectual knowing, but we need to also to go to these other ways of knowing. And here we are speaking about knowing instead of knowledge, because knowledge sounds like some stable thing. And because everything is moving all the time and becoming in this moment, then it's more meaningful to speak about ways of knowing. And we have also practically developed many ways how we can use these different ways of knowing in practice. And I will tell soon about that. So in that, I think that this approach is inviting these conscious and responsible co-creators, that we become this kind of actors. And in that way, I think that it's based on spiritual values. And I'm thinking that actually the spiritual world is here and now. And this kind of approach is also supporting this kind of power with practices, which it's important that we are really present in ourselves and then connecting with others and then creating something together, instead that someone is saying us, for example, that boss is saying that do this or do that there is so much power over practices everywhere. They are in research world, they are in educational world, they are in organizational settings, and we need to become aware of these practices and then find other ways, other kind of practices which are inviting us to be more in that kind of stance of power with. And then it's important that all people are seen as participants also. In this kind of research, there is not someone who you are looking at and researching, but they are co-inquirers. And their values are deeply appreciated, and we are trying to make also our values very visible, that we are taking responsibility what we are creating. So now you maybe think that is there any practical how this could be done, but here is the Finnish Financial Ministry where we have been doing this work 3 years when I was doing in this research, but we are still continuing in different forms there. And here is the first picture about their boss and people sitting there, and then here is the other way of working which came out of this our practice. And they wanted to make cultural shift, and they wanted to bring more like dialogical culture and more open-minded, open-hearted culture, and they went through this kind of process which is here, this co-creative process. And what happened was that this kind of power over practices, what are there in the first picture, when someone is just speaking and others are listening, changed it a lot. So this is about how this practically was made. So it was action research, 1.5 years first, and then continuing 1.5 years. All people were co-inquirers. There was 50 people participating to this. I was doing this inquiry with them, not researching about them. And the research task was that we were co-creating multiple ways of being present in action. And that meant that when we are, for example, in the meetings or when people are working normally, how they could come more aware what is happening. And so this is the one outcome of the research also, that after this research we were using this kind of methodology, but this was also one outcome from there, that here is these 4 processes which all are inviting actually spiritual activities, but we are not speaking about spiritual activities, we are speaking about practices which are helping us to become aware. So they took their practical questions, for example, that how we can do better work or how we can satisfy our customers better, and then we started to look this kind of questions through this cycle. And the first phase is that we become aware of our own thoughts, beliefs and needs. And then the second is that we also become aware what we need to let go. Because always when we really want to renew something, we need to become aware that if there is something in our ways of acting or thinking which is needed to let go. But it's their own choice. Then in attuning we are doing really this gesture of becoming here, standing here in the between earth and the sky, and here we are listening that what is really those kind of values which are they are wanting to embody, and they become aware of what is important in their work, and then they are starting to practice it in this moment, not tomorrow, just in this moment and in small experiments. So what changed there practically was, for example, their relation to their customer, that they started to listen them differently. They opened this kind of open listening. They were not knowing any more answers to in that way that they know it for them, but they really opened it to dialogue, and they also encountered difficult issues and things, and they said themselves that they recovered from all knowing, and they also started to see how they are in learning process. So there was very many outcomes of this research, what I can't now to go through, but you can read this in internet, this whole research, it's there. But what came out to the developmental work, change work, was that this co-creative process was making possible this kind of shifts, which I think are practically shifts how we go toward this kind of conscious revolution. And one is that we are not anymore like trying to make changes, but letting them happen and giving space to them. And also that we are not fixing things, we are not making stable structures, but we are thinking what are these kind of flowing structures which can make possible something new experiments. And then also we are letting go of visioning and planning the future, because it's that kind of thing which is not leading us to really create future here and now. So we wanted to bring the focus here. And then we also opened more new ways of knowing, that not just being in the head, but also embodied sensing and all. And then one thing was also that what we are measuring, that's what we are getting. It's creating something, so we don't focus first results, but we are focusing how it's happening here and now, that how this new culture is already here. So, thank you.